The Cathars, or Cathari, were a medieval religious movement that emerged in Western and Central Europe in the 12th century. They were characterized by heretical beliefs, rejecting many doctrines and practices of the Roman Catholic Church, including the sacrament of the Eucharist and the rite of baptism. The Cathars believed in a cosmological dualism that opposed the material world, considered evil and corrupt, to the spiritual world, considered pure and divine. They believed that only those who had achieved a high level of spiritual purification could enter the divine realm. The Cathars bore many similarities to the Gnostics, a religious movement that originated in ancient Greece and spread to different parts of the Mediterranean world between the 1st and 4th centuries AD. The Gnostics also believed in a cosmological dualism that pitted the material world against the spiritual world, and they too saw the material world in a negative connotation. They maintained that only those who attained spiritual knowledge, gnosis, could enter the divine realm. Both Cathars and Gnostics were considered heretics by the Christian Church, and suffered persecution and condemnation for their beliefs. The Cathars were persecuted by the Roman Catholic Church, and in the 13th century, the Cathars were subjected to a crusade against heresy, called the Albigensian Crusade, in which thousands of them perished. The Cathars believed in Jesus Christ and regarded the Gospels as sacred texts, but they interpreted Christian teachings differently than the Roman Catholic Church. The Cathars rejected the sacrament of the Eucharist and the rite of baptism because they considered them devoid of spiritual value and unnecessary for salvation. They believed that salvation could not be obtained through the sacraments or external practices, but only through spiritual knowledge and practice. In particular, the Cathars believed that the consecrated bread and wine were not the body and blood of Christ, but only symbols. They believed that the rite of the Eucharist was a useless practice because Jesus had offered his sacrifice once and for all, and therefore there was no need to repeat the rite to obtain salvation. Even baptism was considered useless, as the Cathars believed that salvation was an inner and personal experience that could not be obtained through an external rite. The Cathars believed that it was necessary to reject the material world and seek knowledge and union with the divine through the practice of the poor life, abstinence, chastity and charity. Furthermore, the Cathars believed that spiritual enlightenment could be achieved through knowledge of sacred texts, especially the Gospel, which they interpreted in a particular way. They believed that the Gospel contained secret and hidden teachings that could only be understood by those who were able to receive them. In summary, the Cathars believed that salvation was attainable through a virtuous life, knowledge of sacred texts, and the practice of prayer and meditation. They believed that salvation could not be obtained through the sacraments or external practices, but only through internal experience and purification of the soul.